Take this pink ribbon off my eyes. I'm exposed, and it's no big surprise. Don't you think I know exactly where I stand? This world is forcing me to hold your hand. 'Cause I'm just a girl.
I am just a girl. I'm very excited to be here, Brisbane. How are we feeling today? Good. Thank you for that lovely welcome, Michael, and making us feel welcome every single year. My name is Kate. I'm passionate about lots of things, namely closing the gender gap in tech, the colour pink, in case you haven't noticed, glitter, love a little bit of glitter, but we're here to chat about how we can level up in a different way today. And like you got a little spoiler alert for before, this is Mark. We can give him a clap too, since he wasn't on the slide. Mark is a long-term mentor for She Codes, very much part of the ecosystem, and today he's going to be my trusty assistant. So we're going to flip the script a little bit. I appreciate we're just after lunch, and I heard that there were some people out till like 2 or 3 a.m., so we don't want you to fall asleep. So instead of slides or anything like that, we're going to live draw while we're chatting today. So you keep an eye on what he's doing. I can barely see that screen. So it's going to be a surprise. If you can laugh if he does anything funny, then I'll know what Mark's been up to. So a little bit of an introduction about what we do at She Codes, to fill you a little bit in on what we keep alluding to over the last couple of days. At She Codes, we exist to get more women into tech in a bunch of different ways. So it's providing the practical skills, practical training, the inspiration, as well as the career pathways to get women right through the funnel from I know nothing about tech to I'm a software developer. And it's been amazing being here at Laracon because we have had such an amazing part of our community being here over the last couple of years. But I do want to address the elephant in the room. Yeah, Bruce, I think, has been quiet for some reason. I'm not sure what's going on. But we actually don't teach in Laravel or PHP. Spoiler alert, we teach in a Python and React stack so far. But I think that this has all been an elaborate campaign to get us to change that, so check in with me in a little while. But what I am very, very good at, and what we are very, very good at, is leveling up not just the women in the program, but I hope the leveling up the community at the same time. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, how you can level yourselves up while bringing along the community for the ride at the same time. So, I wanted to start with a little bit of a story. And this is a story of 62 8th graders from the San Francisco Bay Area. These 62 8th graders were tasked in a study to analyze some text, use a computer program, and build a series of flowcharts. Maybe they can chat to Mary about that later. To analyze what's happening in the human body when we get a fever. So it's a pretty simple task, right? But there was a little bit of a twist. Half of the students were told this was just a form of self-study and there'd be an exam at the end. The other half were told that they needed to do this exercise to teach someone else, which was a computer character represented on screen as a cartoon. And maybe we can think of it kind of like Clippy. So the task was very identical of what they needed to do, figuring out what the symptoms are in the human body when we get a fever. But that small shift in how they were approaching the task and what the outcome of the task was made a massive difference to the results. These teacher students took their job incredibly seriously. Some of them even apologized to the cartoon character when they realized they'd fed it wrong information. And the output of what they learned and retained was wildly different to those who were just doing self-study. They scored more on the tests, and they retained the information more in the long run. And the researchers at Stanford University described this as the protege effect. The idea that when we teach, we learn. And so that's what we're going to be exploring a bit of today, how mentoring and teaching other people can actually help you level up your career, your skills, your confidence, and your career pathways. So I want the house lights for just a moment so that I can see you all. And I want a little bit of a show of hands. Who has mentored or taught someone in the last 2 years? Okay, we've got about half the room. Cool, you can pop your hands down. And I've got one more question. Who feels like they're not quite good enough or scared because they don't think they have a story to tell or they don't have the experience to mentor and teach someone else? Okay, cool. That's like maybe a third of the room. That's still a lot. So I'm going to be talking to both of those groups. And for everyone who didn't put their hand up as well, about how you can embrace this protege effect to increase your own skills. So we polled our mentor community when we were preparing for this talk, and every single person that we talked to said that being a mentor had been valuable for them personally. And we've got some of the scores up there. We also asked if it had been professionally valuable for them, and the results for that were much more varied. So while personally valuable had a score of 9 out of 10, professionally valuable had a score of like 6.5 out of 10, which is really interesting when we were digging into that data, because our community say that they mentor and teach to serve others, that is entirely a selfless act of helping somebody else. And while we love that, like we're built a community built on helping and teaching others, and I know from being here the last couple of days that the Laravel community is as well, what we want to try and convince you is that there is tiny little selfish acts there as well, because we can use it as a tool for learning and developing, as well as bringing the next generation along with us. And so what do we mean when we say mentor and teacher? So at SheCodes, we use those terms pretty interchangeably, because I actually think that mentoring and teaching really is a two-way street. We're always playing the role of both the mentor and the student at every single moment. Sometimes our mentors are teaching in a bootcamp program. Sometimes they're a very expensive rubber duck. Don't know if anyone feels like that in their day job. And sometimes they're providing their networks and pathways to help people out on their journey. But what a mentor isn't necessarily is a mentor isn't necessarily a trained teacher. Although I really would be interested to tell you how many people in our community have come from teaching to tech. It is way more than you would think. But a mentor and teacher also isn't necessarily an expert. And in fact, we see the best results from people who are just one rung ahead of the person that they're teaching, because it's super relatable. And if we come back to that protege effect study from Stanford University, the students who got the most out of that were actually the students who were the least able. They performed at the same score rate as the highest performing students from the control group. So those who still are feeling like, I'm a bit of an imposter, I don't know what I'm doing, you're actually in the perfect place to leverage the protege effect and teach others along with your learning. So you're never too early or too late to be a teacher. And so we wanted to look into a couple of different areas of how teaching and mentoring can level you up. And we've broken that down into technical skills, soft skills, hate that term, but here we are, and motivation and mindset. And so if we start with benefit number 1, you deepen your understanding of the fundamentals. Understanding and explaining how things work really makes you stop and consider like, oh, I need to understand the why, not just the how, to be able to explain it more deeply. A couple of weeks ago, one of our mentors in the Perth program was saying that they rely on Copilot autofill so much that had forgotten the syntax of how to write stuff in JavaScript, and going through the motions of having to type it all out manually, while incredibly frustrating, really builds a bit of that muscle memory for when you need to solve a problem later. And when a student asks, but why? Which they do all the time, it reveals some gaps in your knowledge. And one of our mentors said, mentoring others had really helped consolidate my fundamental coding knowledge. When I explain concepts, I quickly notice gaps in my own understanding, which leads me to strengthen in those areas. And it's one of those, like, you just don't know what you don't know kind of things. I have another little story for you, and it's from someone who's part of my ecosystem, but is a big friend of the Laracon ecosystem as well. This particular woman, used to be terrified of Git, GitHub, all of it, just all of it, terror. Had managed to successfully avoid doing any of that in her small team for a while, until I was like, hey, we need to teach a class, and Git's kind of a big part of it. And it's really important for the students to understand good foundations right from the beginning. And so she was like, cool. All right, that's fine. I'll wing it. I'll try and figure it out. I'll pretend like I'm not terrified of Git. Winged it, did a great job, came back the next year, did it again, and now she's kind of a boss at it, and it's changed not just her Git experience, but also how her whole team approaches version control. So I have our second one, which is you reinforce best practices, which really follows on from Git, because inherently we're all a little bit lazy, hey? And I think every single person in the room can think of something that they cut corners on. So maybe that's documentation, which that mic drop from Mary, if we just read documentation more, maybe we wouldn't have to debug for 9 hours. That hit really hard. Maybe it's documentation, maybe it's version control, maybe we're just pushing our commit messages of just saying whip, without actually having meaningful commit messages for future us or somebody else to know what the hell we changed. Does everyone have something in mind that they're like, yeah, tests, something in mind that we cut corners on? Well, we know from human behavior that we're way less likely to cut corners if we're modeling behavior for others, because we don't want them to do the bad things that we do, right? Well, we know that, and through the process of having to teach and mentor and demonstrate that good behavior, it actually builds habits, which at the end of the day is making us good developers in the long run, even if we side begrudgingly having to fill in our README file or writing meaningful commit messages. And so number 3 of our technical benefits is that you learn new things. And I know that we're lifelong learners here, otherwise you wouldn't have spent your week hanging out at Laracon. But there is so much to learn in tech. We absolutely can never learn everything. And outsourcing a little bit of that, getting students to learn some stuff and tell us things, means we have way more sources of information to go to find new things that are happening in tech. And one of our mentors was sharing with us that there was a Python library that a student found. Sorry, again, we're Python people. Don't hate us. There was a Python library that they found that they were telling the mentor about, who was never seen it before. And that mentor now uses that Python library every single day, all of the time, and it's really changed the way that they work. And I think maybe we should let Mark speak for a little bit, because he's doing a really great job doodling over here. But a couple of weeks ago, we were talking to one of our alumni who's building a dashboard for me, and we got off the call, and Mark said to me, like, God, I think she's a genius. Do you want to tell us about it, Mark?
Sure thing. So we were on this call. Kate's wanting this dashboard. We've got a lot of data coming in from a lot of different systems. The joys of the kind of SheetCode's ecosystem is there's ticketing, campaign, text messages, all of that jazz. So we've got all this data that we want to get in and manage. And as she's explaining her idea for how we synchronize this data and get it in one place, in my head, I wandered off and started building, I think, like 8 different services in AWS, this beautiful ivory tower architecture. It's going to be perfectly resilient, performant, unless it was last Monday. And in my head, it's just like all of these things that I'm going to have to do to just solve this relatively simple problem. And then I came back to reality, and then she's continued to explain her solution. And it was like, well, it's an MVP. We just want to kind of proof of concept this out, see if we can get something. I'm just using GitHub Actions to just make a call to this service and tell it to sync to this other service. And my mind just went, because I have only ever thought of GitHub Actions as, oh, I can build and I can deploy. I'd never really considered it as anything else. And is it the proper way of doing, is there a proper way of doing anything? It was a proportional response to the thing that we wanted to get done at the time. And it it really highlighted to me that, oh, I really need to look at my tools and think about what is it that I can do with them, and can I go outside of the box to solve problems? And it just gave me another little tool for my tool belt. So it was one of those little moments for me.
Yeah, because it's a 360 relationship, right? Teacher to mentor to teacher to student to teacher and back again. So to recap that, so some benefits that you might receive from being a teacher or a mentor somewhere in your life, reinforcing best practices, deepening your understanding of the fundamentals, and learning some new things or a different way of thinking. But we know that as developers, we actually aren't paid necessarily to type, we're paid to think. Even though we seem to only value the typing and all of the productivity gains that I keep hearing, maybe we are paid to type. But the thinking part is where it becomes really powerful. And this is where I wanted to explore some of those soft skills. Like Mish was telling us yesterday, critical thinking and understanding the right questions to ask are going to be what are making us really powerful developers in the future. And I get asked all the time, mostly by teachers and high school students, like, what are the skills of the future? And I think they want me to say things like software development, cybersecurity. But I think that the most important skills of the future are curiosity and perseverance, of just keeping going when the thing gets hard and asking really good questions. So benefit number 4, you learn to break down complex problems, because teaching requires you to take these big abstract ideas and to take them into small, meaningful little chunks that someone who's new might be able to digest. And I think of that a little bit like rubber ducking. And if you're not rubber ducking yet, who are you? But the concept of rubber ducking is that instead of, typing away with our little coding fingers, we can give them a rest and explain the problem that we're trying to solve to a rubber duck, or maybe another person if you're really lucky. And the process of talking through that helps you get to the conclusion of the problem you're trying to solve. And that's the really beautiful thing about these relationships of mentoring and teaching, because you can have that conversation a lot in real time, and they don't even know that you're sitting there being like, oh yeah, that is how we break down that problem, and that is how I solve that thing at work. But it's also about how we tailor our communication to different audiences. And we know that in our jobs, we wouldn't be having the same conversation in the exact same way with products, with marketing, with our CTO, with the CEO. All of those conversations are going to have to be tailored to different level of technical jargon and experience and depth, highlighting different things. But that process of working with newbies, and particularly with juniors, is that we have to get really good at flexing that muscle of changing communication style for those different audiences. So benefit number 5, you strengthen communication and collaboration skills, as well as building empathy. And when we talked to our mentor community, this was a resounding yes across the board. Every single person we spoke to said that they had seen a marked improvement of their communication skills as a result of being a mentor. 100% across the board said yes, which is great. Proves that this works. But I also would be really remiss to go through this entire talk without talking about diversity, right? I run She Codes Australia. We're a coding program for women, surrounded by women, and diversity is super important. We have women of all ages, of cultural backgrounds, and have come from different walks of life. So in our bootcamp program, we have had a chef, we've had a sommelier, we have had a coffee scientist do the program, and as a little spoiler alert, all 3 of those women now work as software developers. Got out of the hospitality industry, now they're working in tech. But having conversations with those different people, they're going to understand different things or be able to explain things in different ways, that something might link to the way that we think about wine and something else might link to the way that we think about coffee. Because working in teams builds that empathy. Yeah. So I have one more story for you, and this one hits really hard every time I tell it. So we're going to come on a little bit of a journey. This was right back at the beginning of my She Codes journey. It was about 2016. We were running a one-day workshop in Perth. And if we can just set the scene for you a little bit, we had about 100 women who, most of whom had not written a line of code before, and they're there on a Saturday morning. They're excited, they're scared, they're a bit awkward because they don't really know how to talk to everybody else. They think that everybody else in the room knows way more than they do, and that they're going to be the only one that's going to look really stupid. They're all having their little panic over there while everyone's settling in. And to support those 100 people, we have about 20 mentors in the room. And these mentors are a bit of a mix of men and women from different parts of the industry who are volunteering their time to support women through this journey. And so this guy pulls me aside, one of the mentors pulls me aside, and he's like, Kate, I feel like everyone's staring at me. Are they staring at me? And I'm like, no, I honestly don't think they've even noticed. I think they're all having their own little moment over here. But no, you're so fine. Like, what's wrong? What's happening? And he said to me, he said, Kate, I've never experienced being a minority before. This man worked in, absolutely no shade to this man, he's a lovely man. He works in a mining company. He works in a software team at a mining company. So I'm going to let you picture what his team looks like. But had never, ever in his life been a minority. And this was the first moment where he felt like that. He said that to me, and then he paused for 30 seconds or so, and he said, is this what you feel like all the time? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, kinda. Not for me so much, because I hang out with women all the time, but for most women in tech, yes, absolutely, this is what they feel all the time. And that was a really powerful moment, and I think about that all the time, because on one hand, like crazy that he went 40 years without not being a minority ever in his life, but also I feel so proud that he got to spend that with us, and he got to do that with us, and now the next 40, 50 years of his life, he gets to understand that level of empathy, of feeling like you kind of don't really fit in. Because like Mish said yesterday, sympathy and empathy are two different things. So this process of working with people who aren't in your team, who think differently to you, maybe they look different to you and they've got a different background and experience, can really give you an empathy into, sympathy into their life, and maybe you can build some empathy with them along the way as well. Okay, so in that section, just to recap, we have breaking down complex problems and strengthening communication and collaboration skills and building that level of empathy. And so when I was talking to Michael about this, last year on the LaraCon stage, we heard from Eloise. Was anyone in the audience hearing Eloise talking about, yeah, I can see a few hands, mostly just the front row here. You're all invisible back there. But she was talking about the value that having juniors and having an internship program has had on the vibes of her organization and the things that they've learned in their organization. And I kind of think that this is a little bit of a follow-on from there. But what I really wanted to give you is some hard facts that you can take to your boss of like, this is why we need to be investing in providing these opportunities to our team members to not only mentor and develop within house, but also are there places in the world that we can go share the things that we're really good at. And so some numbers for you, and this is why I brought my iPad out, so that I could make sure that I read the real numbers to you. Mentorship programs reportedly yield an ROI of up to 600% of their cost. So 6 times return on investment for investing in a mentorship program. According to LinkedIn, 7 in 10 people say that learning improves their sense of connection to an organization, and 8 in 10 say that learning adds purpose to their work. And interestingly, in a similar study, they found that participating in mentoring programs can increase the retention of mentees, 72%, compared to non-mentored employees of 49%, which I don't think is maybe particularly surprising for a lot of us. But it also increased the retention of mentors at a rate of 69%. So 72% for mentees, 69% for mentors, that's basically the same, versus the control group or the non-mentored employees at 49%. It's a massive increase of retention of your team members. And lastly, let's not forget that it makes you feel really good being able to share the things that you know. And again, for our juniors out there, or anyone who feels like, who put their hand up at the beginning saying they don't feel like they have a story to tell, being able to share your knowledge actually helps quieten that voice in your head that says, I'm not good enough, I don't know anything. Because imposter syndrome honestly never goes away. Sorry, spoiler alert, you're going to have it forever. Can't do anything about that. But how we can help manage imposter syndrome is by having those opportunities to share and reinforce that actually we know more than we think we know. And so I like to think about this in terms of a commit. We're going to come back full circle to our commit messages from before, because being a mentor or a teacher or being part of a community really is a commitment. It's a commitment that we have to invest time and energy into those relationships. It's an active role, it's not a passive role. Community doesn't just happen. My life would be much easier if community just happened, but it doesn't. It is very active. And so it is a commitment. But if we think about a commit of our code, it's also recognizing the contributions that we've made to our code base. So every commit shows us that we've contributed to that community in some way. And so we can think about that when we're making commitments to each other, of those little tiny contributions that we're making to the bigger community. And so I want you to think about what you're going to commit to today. And none of this was actually because I want you to come mentor at SheCodes, although I would love to have this whole room be part of our journey. But I want you to think about where you can leave your legacy and where you can commit to your community. I get asked by schools probably every second week if I would come in and show them what the day of a life of a developer looks like, and I don't know what I would tell them. Get up on stage and I talk to people. I get asked by schools all the time. Meetup groups are always looking for new speakers. You might be able to mentor and teach someone within your own organization. Maybe it's going to a boot camp or to university and bringing an industry lens that they are so desperate for. Or maybe it's finding someone outside of your immediate team within the organization who's curious and just wants to know a little bit more about what you do and what you know. And so what I want you to leave you with is this thought that we all want to be part of something bigger than just us. That is part of the human condition, and that's why things like this work, because we want to be part of something that's not just us. There's such a dramatic shift in the way that we work, the way that we live, the way that we talk, because we are chasing connection. And so leaving today, I want you to think that we're not a gatekeeper, we're going to be a gate opener. We're going to open the gate for the people who come behind us. Because sharing our knowledge really pays dividends. All of the reasons that we listed up on screen before of how you can level up your own career and coding skills, but also bringing the rest of the community along with you and feeling all of those warm fuzzies. And hopefully, maybe, we'll get some of you up on stage next year. And I heard some people talking at lunch about like, oh, maybe I'll submit a call for paper for Laracon 2026. If you'd like to connect with me, because I think that's all we have time for today, my QR code for my LinkedIn is appearing on screen right now. It is actually big enough for me to see that. Mark, unfortunately, is a social media ghost. So if you want to talk to Mark, you have to find him in real life. I know, in real life, because he does not exist on the internet. Some people think he's actually not a real person because he can't be found. We've got evidence now that he is a real person, but you have to talk to him in real life. But me, I'm going to be around for the rest of today. We're running a workshop tomorrow. And this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Laracon.
That was fantastic. How many times over the last 5-6 months did you two practice that? Because from what I saw, you nailed every single interaction there.
Thank you, thank you. It has been, I think Mark particularly has been on a roller coaster of I'm excited to existential dread. And I did joke about half an hour ago that I was just going to go completely off script. And he was like, don't do that, Kate. We had a plan.
Amazing. Well, thank you Thank you very much, Kate, for everything that you do for women in tech and getting them into tech, because I know that it's daunting. And we have seen, I've spoken about it in years past. Back in 2018, Jess Archer was the woman in tech at Laracon, and you were here yesterday to see just how much we've seen growth. And people like you, people like Jess, people like Susanna that are really, putting themselves on stage. Leah, Mish, everyone that we've had over the years, being up on this stage and, as you just said, submit to speak at events, because when people out there see people like them on stage, that's what gets them up here. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So obviously SheCodes is always looking for mentors, but there's places around, as you said, universities, schools, places like that. Look for it. People are looking.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a million different communities that are looking for support. I mean, chat to Susanna and the Larabels community of what we can do here in Australia. From a meetup perspective, I get approached by, it's probably every week I get something in my inbox of like, can you speak at this event? Or can you come and mentor? Or like, I've got a year 10 girl that really wants to do web development and she has to go to the boys' school across the road to be able to study. Can she learn with someone that you know?
Yeah.
It is endless. So there are definitely people out there if you go and look for them. And I'm happy to connect anyone here with things that I've been asked recently.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Mark.
Thank you.